Hi, and welcome to episode 5 of This Is Actually Pretty Cool, the web series where I am researching and cooking my way through the 1998 cookbook / memoir, In the Kitchen with Elinor Donahue. In today's episode, we're going to talk about page 27 of the book, and I'm also going to pull in some information from the Archive of American Television interview, and then we'll move on to today's recipe. So in the book, Elinor Donahue tells us that she started singing and dancing in vaudeville when she was 4.5 years old. Vaudeville was a form of variety entertainment. It began in France toward the end of the 1800s, and it was popular in the US and Canada from the 1880s through the early 1930s. So that means that when Miss Donahue started in, it sounds like around 1941, vaudeville was really on its way out. But in the Archive of American Television interview, Miss Donahue tells us, based on the number of people who came to see each show, it did still seem to be very popular, at least in the Pacific Northwest, which is where she was performing. Now, there are other performers who entered vaudeville in its later or its declining years, and they used it to launch their careers in cinema, which is kind of ironic considering that the invention and the advent and the popularity of cinema is really what did a lot of damage to vaudeville and what ultimately caused its end. So celebrities that use vaudeville as a launching pad for careers in cinema include Judy Garland, Abbott and Costello, Cary Grant, Bob Hope, Milton Berle, Sammy Davis Jr., and the Three Stooges. So vaudeville was basically what we would call a variety show today, so meaning they'd have different types of acts within one larger show. So for example, you'd have some people singing and dancing like Miss Donahue did. You'd have some doing juggling or acrobatics. Some were telling jokes. Some were putting on one-act plays, things like that. It reminds me a little of talent shows, and specifically it reminds me a little of America's Got Talent or like Britain's Got Talent. So in the Archive of American Television interview, Miss Donahue tells us that she started performing at camp shows for soldiers because, this was right around when World War II was kicking off, and, 1941, 1942 is when America really started, entering the war. And anyway, someone saw her at one of these camp shows and they told her parents, like, oh, you know what, you should take her to Seattle and have her audition for the agents that book these vaudeville acts. So her parents did that, and apparently the audition went really well because she got her start in vaudeville at that point. She toured on the Burt Levy circuit, which did shows in Yakima, Spokane, and Seattle. Those are all cities in Washington State, which is where Miss Donahue and her family were living at the time. If you remember, she was born in Tacoma. Miss Donahue explains that what would happen is, they perform in these theaters that were showing movies, and so they would run like one half of a movie, and then the movie would pause, and then they would have like 5 acts of the vaudeville show, right? And then the vaudeville show would have its intermission, and Miss Donahue explains like, oh, hey, our intermission was most likely the second half of the movie. And then once that was done, you'd have another 5 acts of the vaudeville. So basically it went like movie, vaudeville, more movie, more vaudeville. In the interview, Jennifer Howard asked Miss Donahue what she wanted to be when she grew up. And she specifically asks, did you want to be an entertainer? And Elinor Donahue says something that I think really becomes a theme of her childhood, just based on the book and on the interview. She says, I thought I was grown up. I mean it quite sincerely. I was a little old person that worked, and when you did vaudeville, it was 6 shows a day, and it was tough. If you had a cold or you had a headache or whatever, you went out there and, did it. And I enjoyed it. I loved it. And that was what I did. And I thought that's what I do. And I never thought about the future. The future just kind of was taking care of itself as I went on ahead. So to me, someone who has read this book and listened to this interview, there really is this dichotomy between, oh, you know what, here's this little girl singing and dancing and she's having fun and isn't that wonderful? And here's this child working these long adult hours, no matter what. If she's sick, she's just got to go out there and do it no matter what. And you don't think of that, at least since child labor laws went into effect, you don't really think of that as something children have to do. You think of that as more of like, oh, hey, I, as an adult at my job that, pays me enough to live on, yeah, there are days that I do have to work even though I'm not feeling well or whatever it is. So you've got that dichotomy between, oh, hey, here's this really fun thing to do, and, oh no, this is a serious job. Like, you got to show up and perform, and you just got to push through whatever it is you're going through, personally or health-wise, and you got to get out there and you got to perform. Now, she was making money from these shows, and I'm sure that was very useful to her family, because I don't know anyone that's going to say no to extra money. But at this point, she still has 2 parents, and that includes a father who works. And so later we're going to see Miss Donahue and her mother go out on their own, and at that point, they are going to be just super, super desperately dependent on the money Mary Elinor, as she was called at the time, makes when she performs. But before we get to that, we have today's recipe. So in the book, Miss Donahue tells us that, when she was 6 years old and she was performing, in one of these vaudeville shows in Seattle, she and her mother decided to splurge at the Olympic Hotel, and that's, it was and still is a luxury hotel in downtown Seattle, and they were like, yeah, we're going to splurge, we're going to eat dinner at this hotel, right? So Elinor Donahue ordered shrimp curry, and she wasn't a fan of it. She specifically says in the book that she was, quote, underwhelmed, end quote. But then she tells us that, later on she came to enjoy the, quote, spicy yet delicious flavors of curries, end quote. And with that, we jump into today's recipe, shrimp curry. All right, 'tis I, your now invisible narrator, here to show you how to make shrimp curry. We have 4 tablespoons of butter that we have melted in a large saucepan, and to that we are going to add 3 green onions that have been chopped, so we're just going to add that in there. Kind of stir it around there, and then 1 clove of garlic minced. Now I use this just jarred minced garlic, and I just find that easier than mincing actual garlic. So a half teaspoon of this equals approximately 1 clove. So you can go ahead and just take half a teaspoon. You could probably do more if you really like garlic, but trying to follow these recipes exactly, at least the first time I do them, right? So anyway, we've added that, and then we are going to saute the onions and the garlic until they are soft. So just going to kind of stir this around here. I feel like the onions were already pretty soft, being green onions. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. I think that's pretty good. All right, so then we are going to take, 3 tablespoons all-purpose flour. So just 1, 2, 3, and it's supposed to just sprinkle with that. I missed that part, so much for me following these recipes exactly. But anyway, I'm going to just go ahead and stir that in a little bit. And then we are going to add 2 tablespoons of curry powder. The kind I found at the store was the Jamaican style, which I've used that style and that brand before, and I really like them. So we're doing, like I said, 2 tablespoons of that. You could probably, again, you could probably do more to taste. All right, so there's 1 tablespoon. And let me see if this will let me, oh, it will let me dip in there. And 2 tablespoons. All right, so put that back on there. And then we've got our ginger, excuse me, and this is just half a teaspoon of powdered ginger. It's the same Badia brand, and this is ground ginger. So go ahead and put that. There's that. All right. And then we are going to gradually add 1 cup of chicken stock. So I just got this broth here. This I got from Aldi. So I'm going to pour that into my measuring cup. Okay. And then we will just gradually, probably for that reason right there with the steam, add that. And then it calls for 1 cup of light cream. So I learned when I went to go buy the ingredients for this on Thursday, because I know about heavy whipping cream. I've used that in a lot of dishes that I've cooked before. I could not find light cream. So finally I went to Google and I said, hey, you know, what's up with this? And light cream was something that they used to use in coffee, but then coffee creamer was invented. So there's basically not a need for light cream anymore because coffee creamer exists. Now I did find some things online that said like, oh, you can make light cream by mixing half and half with, you know, full fat milk. I went ahead and just decided to do half and half. I didn't really want to, you know, mess around with like, oh, how much milk to, you know, half and half or, you know, anything like that. So I'll definitely take the blame here, but just be aware that light cream is not something that really exists in stores anymore. So make sure, yep, 1 cup. Do that. It smells really good. Okay, we're going to do that. And, oh, it looks really nice too. I'm a big fan of coconut curries. So I'm actually really excited about this. Like the way this is right now, the way it looks, like I could just do this as its own little soup and just pour it in a bowl and drink it, but I'm not going to. So, all right, we are going to cook and stir that until well blended. Now it doesn't say what heat to cook it on. I have it on low just because I hate for things to pop out at me, like for the butter. But I'm gonna go ahead and put it on medium and just stir. I'm not clear on, you know, how long. It just says until it's well blended and thickened. So that is actually really hot. Medium might be a little, I'm going to lower that a little bit because it is really hot, like on my hands. Let's stir that. All right, so that has started to thicken. So we are going to take and add 2 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice. You may remember we used lemon juice in last week's recipe. So I'm just going to do do my obsessive check to make sure it is 2 tablespoons. It sure is. So there's 1 tablespoon. And 2 tablespoons. All right. That, and then we are adding 1 pound of cooked tiny shrimp. This was the smallest shrimp I could find. I found this at Ingles. I think it was like $9 for the bag. So we're just going to go ahead and pour this in here. This I bought frozen and I just de-thawed it last night. So I'll go ahead and stir that. I do want to make sure the shrimp gets really warm just because it's been in the refrigerator. It was in the freezer and then in the refrigerator, so I just want to make sure that gets warm. Because there's really nothing worse than like, oh, you think the dish is warm enough and then you bite into one part of it and it's cold. So I'm going to do this on medium now. So while that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and make sort of the, other part of this dish. So this is the part that the curry and shrimp and all is going to go on, right? So she listed different condiments in the book. I was able to get most of them. She didn't list amounts for the condiments. So, definitely gonna have to freestyle it there. First, we have rice. She didn't say how much rice. I went ahead and just cooked a cup of rice. And so I'm just gonna do like maybe just a scoop and a half of some rice there. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and prepare my condiments. So there's a chopped banana. I'm just going to go ahead and chop one right now. I have actually never had banana in a curry, so I'm pretty excited about this. Plus, I probably need more potassium in my diet, so it's nice to have the bananas around. So we're going to chop these. That is sliced, so let me go ahead and just cut each one in half. Okay. All right, so that's our banana. And then she also said chopped eggs. I went ahead and just boiled 4 eggs and then chopped them. So I figured that, what I don't use in this, I can use to make some egg salad. So that'll be nice. Also, chutney. Recipe calls for chutney. This I found at Ingles. The brand is Patax, and it's a sweet mango chutney. It tells me it's mild, and I have never had chutney before, so I'm excited about that as well. Also, some chopped peanuts, which I felt like these peanuts were small enough to where I wouldn't really need to chop them. And then chives. I actually found it was a pack of 3 of these for $4 at Ingles. They're chopped chives and they're lightly dried, so you keep them in the refrigerator, but they are, it says, fresh for 4 weeks once they're opened. And I really like this idea. I live alone, so sometimes things like fresh produce they spoil before I can use them, so I'm really excited about this, and I'm planning to use the chives in other things as well. It did also call for coconut. It didn't say like dried or coconut juice or anything like that, so I assume it just meant like coconut. And I actually once bought a coconut. I was like, oh, I can eat coconut. Like I'm on an island, right? And it's just me alone on this island, and a coconut falls, and you know, I can eat like a coconut and like drink right from the coconut, right? When I tell y'all, I had to pull out my entire toolbox and still could not get that thing open. Like, I'm trying hammers and everything. And I listened to a podcast the other day, and it wasn't about cooking or anything at all, but the guy was saying like, oh yeah, you know, we were working in Thailand, and I worked at this bar, and you know, we served, you know, drinks with coconut, obviously, and so I had a machete to open the coconut, and I was like, oh, does it take a machete? Is that what it takes? I realized like, oh, I'm never going to open a coconut. And then just going to this recipe, I'm like, oh, did Elinor Donahue make all these like to test them? And if so, was she just in her kitchen with a machete? Like, the thought of that just cracks me up. So yeah, those are our condiments. All right, so our curry part, you know, with the shrimp and everything is all cooked, and it looks amazing. I've got the 2 scoops of rice, or a scoop and a half of rice in a bowl here. I am going to add my condiments now. So just gonna do like a little pinch of the chives. And then so I can add more later, so I'm going to do just maybe like this much, you can see, of the chutney. It's really thick. It smells really good, if I didn't already say that. Then I'll go ahead and stir that together in there. I'm going to go ahead and just do all of my banana slices. Sorry to reach over like that. Do all of that. And then I think maybe just like a pinch of the chopped egg. So it's actually the part, it's the one ingredient I'm not super sure about. I've had egg in, you know, some Asian dishes, but I don't think I've ever had it in a curry before. And then we'll add some peanuts, just a few. I wonder how it would be if you cooked the peanuts in with the curry instead of like adding it after. It would probably be really good. Okay, so then it is time for me to grab a spoon and put the shrimp curry in here. So just going to hold that over there. And I'm just doing like 3 ladles of it. And I'm just going to mix up. You'd think I would have been less sure about the bananas being in here, but I'm actually pretty okay with that. I think it's the egg that's really throwing me off. But you haven't tasted it yet, so it looks really good. That's what it looks like. And let me see if it's, just trying to make sure it's not going to burn my mouth when I go to eat it. So, all right, well, I'm going to try to stir up some stuff from the bottom here so I'm getting all the condiments and everything. So, without further ado, here we go. Pretty good. I don't know that I would do the lemon juice in next time. Like, I think I would leave that out. Just because it has kind of a lemony taste that I don't really expect in a curry. I probably would just honestly add more curry powder, or maybe even like some coconut milk. So instead of like, oh, you know, she calls for coconut in the condiments, instead of doing that, just maybe add some coconut milk in addition to the light cream, or maybe even in place of that light cream. But yeah, this is really good. I'm going to go ahead and eat because it is actually dinner time here. This is also the earliest time I'm finishing a recipe to eat it. So I won't be eating this at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night like I've been doing with the last few. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see y'all next time for episode 6. Bye!